with the topics as well. So we're excited for tonight's. Before we get going, just a little bit about what we're doing. Most of the people on this call have been joining in on other nights. So, it's, during these times, these uncertain times, we're trying to figure out a way to kind of, give back to our community, continue to build relationships on and off the field, and continue to kind of further our education path in certain topics and points we can learn along the way. So obviously not everything's going to maybe correlate directly to you specifically, but hopefully there's a few things through this call you can kind of take to yourself, whether it be the mental side of things, drills that you could be doing, teamwork style stuff, whatever it may be. I think there's going to be a lot of good stuff in tonight's call. So we're excited to get that going. Eric Lane's on the call with his video going. If you want to go ahead and introduce yourself and give us a little brief background of your baseball background. Obviously, I've gotten to know you for quite some years now, on staff together for a while at Lower Columbia and everywhere in between. So I don't want to steal that stage from you. So go ahead and give us a little bit of your brief baseball background, and then we'll kind of jump into some questions.
Yeah, for sure. First, DJ, thanks for having us and myself and our program on here. And hello to everybody that's tuning in. I appreciate that. Hope everyone's doing well through, obviously these crazy times. But yeah, as far as my background, I come from Port Angeles, Washington. Like all of us, we started playing baseball when really young. Two older brothers that I followed around. Both are my oldest brother. Got to play at University of Washington, so I got to see him play college baseball when I was young, and something that I always aspired to do. When I got up to high school, and it really became, something that I wanted to try to pursue in college, but, not a ton of opportunities, even at the junior college route for me out of high school, just small town, being kind of out there, kind of in the middle of nowhere. And I got a chance at Lower Columbia where I coach now, and got to work my tail off a little bit there and learn from some great coaches and other teammates. And, got to move on to Gonzaga University and play there. Got an opportunity to play at a Division I program, well-respected program in the Northwest. After that, I liked it so much I wanted to start coaching it. So got into coaching, went right to Lower Columbia where I'm at now, and I've been here for about 7 seasons now, so for 7.5. So excited about being back at the program that I got to play at.
That's awesome. I think we'll get into a lot more as we go, but conveniently enough, you talk about going to Lower Columbia and then Gonzaga, and I think those are two pretty historic programs, I'd say, here in the Northwest, with kind of the development path of getting players to that next level. So it's kind of cool to see the junior college side and the Division I side, kind of how that translates and works together. And we'll talk about that a little bit more as we get going on that. As far as, these COVID times, and we're all kind of dealing with them in our own ways, whether it be better or worse, just different. But as far as how are you handling this? I know you've been married for a little bit now. So the personal side, how are you kind of going through that? How's that working for you? If you want to touch on the team side, kind of what are you guys doing or not doing during these times with your team? Obviously, junior college being a little bit different as far as maybe the roster piece and having sophomores go on or stay, or the incoming freshmen. But how are you kind of handling these times personally, but also as a team atmosphere?
Yeah, personally, I got to spend a lot of time with my wife. We're on our 2nd year of marriage, and it's gone good, being home with her all the time. But usually I'm gone every weekend with the JC schedule being at our college baseball in general. But personally, just trying to, I guess, re-energize. Not that there was no energy before this season started, because we were pretty excited about it, but just be able to look at, in depth of what our program's about. If there's something that we would like to change, as a program, what can we do, to get better? How can we change? Obviously people talk, hey, you got to adapt. Some things obviously we want to keep around as a program, but being able to look into a little more detail. The other thing is, we like to do some field projects, and we're looking to, add a few things to make, Lower Columbia more exciting. We got great facilities, but, we would like to add a few things. And so all these ideas, when you're not able to do a lot, all these ideas keep coming up. And so, we're trying to, sift through that. And then, as a team, I haven't done a lot of, Zoom calls. This is my 3rd total. So figuring that out, but, just touching base with the guys, seeing how they're doing. I trust our guys on our team to get out there and keep working. I think bringing perspective to them too is important. Just, hey, listen, everyone's going through it. If you start feeling sorry for yourself, that's not a good thing. There's a lot of people that are feeling sorry for you, but personally, you got to be able to attack every single day, the best you can, whether it's, get out and go on a run, or, if you take ground balls, hit off a tee, find the best way to make yourself better, because at the end of the day, we're going to come out of this thing and baseball is going to be back, and you got to be ready. And I think bringing perspective to the guys on that was the biggest piece. And so we're excited to, give them some advice through it, but, at the end of the day, we're going to get back and they got to be ready to go.
Totally. I think you hit on a couple interesting points there. The first one being kind of the refresh, restart. I mean, we're kind of in the same boat here as DBAT Bothell. We've been open about almost 2 years now. It was kind of a perfect, I guess, maybe a blessing in disguise, as much as my owner probably hates to say that, to kind of, step back and reevaluate what we're doing, whether it be right or wrong or how we're approaching everything in here. So I think you kind of hit that right on the head. The last piece of that being kind of sports-minded people, I think we handle a lot of things sometimes better, and I don't mean that on any shame on non-sports people, but a lot of times handling adversity, whether it be controlling the uncontrollable or trusting the process and some of that. And I think it kind of correlates. And I think people that are going to bounce back and be strong after this are probably a lot of people that prepared for this, and as far as prepared for the work to put in. And I think a lot of times it's funny to see how the sports-minded people sometimes do a little bit better job dealing with the uncontrollable and really just trying to focusing day by day, work by work, and being ready for the grind. So.
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, that's a key component. We're obviously talking a lot about team culture, and we'll get to a lot of that. But it's the coming back from adversity. That's one thing that as a program, as a coach, you want to make sure the guys are able to handle that. And this is one of the biggest ones they're going to face in their career. No matter if you're senior, junior, sophomore, whatever you are in high school, little league, whatever it is, they're going to face adversity. And so I think we've done a pretty good job in our program, and a lot of programs do, but instilling that in them. And that's why I'm not so worried about our guys. I think they're doing a great job from what I've seen, but they got to prepare and overcome that type of stuff.
Well, I think that kind of leads us right into our next kind of point here that I was going to bring up with you is kind of, jumping into Lower Columbia, the LC kind of factor that's been going on really for a long time, but really specifically those last 3 years. I mean, it's a shame to see the 2020 season in the kind of the way it did, but let's kind of talk about the 2017, 18, 19 run that you guys have put together. I was fortunate enough to see you guys. I think it was, I don't remember if it was opening weekend or weekend 2 against Spokane. And you got, I mean, a quality club once again. What have you seen as far as, some similarities amongst these championship teams? For guys that don't know, that are on the call, the NWAC's, it's a wood bat junior college baseball league up here in the Northwest. I know a lot of people know it's quality baseball, but I don't think a lot of people realize how quality it is. The wood bat factor throws a big leverage point in there for the pro guys and some other avenues as well, as far as getting those guys ready for the next level. So guys that haven't seen junior college NWAC baseball that are on this call, highly suggest, if not mandate it, if you have any interest in playing college baseball yourself. But if you want to talk a little bit about kind of what you saw on those 3 teams and even into this 4th team, as far as the quality of team that you're putting together. And I believe your 17 year was an assistant and then kind of transitioned to that head coaching role. So there's probably a little maybe spectrum of that aspect you could throw in there as well.
Yeah, for sure. I think, the biggest thing is it's an accumulation. Our program, it's got a rich tradition. You're a player and a coach, a part of it, yourself, DJ, but it's an accumulation of a lot of things. There was a lot of coaches before me that have instilled a lot in this program. A lot of guys that I've learned from, whether it's coaching or players, that have helped, get us to this point as a program. And I'm just, happy to be a part of it and hopefully enrich it as we go forward. But, as far as the teams go over the last, few years, we're very fortunate to have a lot of great facilities for the development piece for our players. We want to develop physically for these guys. We really, the biggest thing is we want to test their limits too. We want them, put them in situations where they're uncomfortable, so that when we get to that playoff time, we can make a run. Guys play, a little more relaxed, and we've tested them, and they know that the guy next to them is going to pick them up. And we do that in a variety of different ways, whether it's in the baseball side or just the weight training. We want to test their limits and make this program very, very tough for them, so we can weed out the guys that, can't quite cut it. And a lot of it starts in recruiting. And a lot of these guys we had, I think what we can see from, the guys that played for us is they worked their tail off. It mattered. They cared about Lower Columbia College. They cared about the program. they wanted to come here to win a championship. Obviously in baseball, we've got these individual goals and we want to reach them, and we want to be great. We want to be the guy that hits the home run all the time. But if you can get rid of that, unselfishness sometimes, or the selfishness sometimes, then if you can breed that in your team, that you got some good things. And I think over the last 3 years, we've been able to do that. We've been able to, and through the recruiting process, be able to get the right guys that fit our system. When we get them on campus, we're completely honest, so they know exactly what they're getting into, so we can hit the ground running right when they get here, because it's a 2-year program. You need to rely on sophomores to lead, and we want to do that right away. And I think through the recruiting process, we can kind of sift out the guys that maybe don't fit what we're trying to do.
Is there, we jump into the recruiting side, we can go all day on that. Is there a particular thing you're looking for? You mentioned earlier before we hopped on kind of a smaller class coming in already. I'm assuming there's some real particular items you're looking for. Is there anything, if you had to kind of list 1 or 2 items that you're looking for in a student athlete?
Yeah, first of all, we want guys, communicate. We want them to be able to communicate with us and talk to us, carry on conversations. That's very simple. Obviously, we want them to be great players, and we're going to recruit those guys. But, we also want to get them on campus so we can carry on these conversations, talk to them personally, find out more about them, call them frequently, and what they're about. We talk to a lot of different guys, and there's not really a perfect science to it. But if we can talk to guys and we really strongly believe they want to go out there and win as a team and they want to win championships, if they're talking a lot about team goals, over their individual goals a lot of the time, I really like to hear stuff like that. And not in a sense where they're just saying what I want to hear, but more so when it's just natural and you can feel that from a guy. That's very important to me. And then someone that just, fits in with what we're trying to do as a program, whether it's the physical piece or if he's tough enough mentally, because we want to run a really, really tough program.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you hit a couple good points there. As far as kind of those runs, I think to have those runs, obviously there's some sort of, I would say, skill development going on, whether it be the pitchers gaining velocity or pitch command, or adding a second or third pitch or getting in shape. Obviously you guys have a pretty good structure in place to move guys to that next level. If you want to touch a little bit as far as, I know you have the study hall policies for the academic stuff, but let's talk baseball. Kind of what kind of developmental plan do you have in place to kind of make sure these guys are moving on to the next level, whether it be the LSUs, the UWs, the Washington States, or even the Division IIs, NAIs, and everywhere in between? What's the plan for these freshmen that step on campus, or maybe even, seniors that graduate? Obviously you're having success there, so there has to be some sort of plan in place. And what's that developmental plan?
Yeah, no, for sure. It's a great question. Something we try to develop each year and try to make it better. But, I haven't mentioned these guys yet, but, Coach Ian Sanderson, Coach Kurt Lipinski, and Coach Michael Forgione, guys that have been on staff for a couple of years with us and have been around the program, they do a huge part of this too. I'm the one talking here, but to be honest with you, there's a lot that goes into it. And Coach Sanderson on the pitching side, I stay out of the pitching. It's all his deal. But to watch him go about his business on that side, and there's a structured plan every single week, what guys need to do, how we're going to keep them safe. I can go into a lot of the pitching side and how we want to do that. But the biggest thing is take care of their arms so they can move on, not to overuse them, but to make them stronger, build them up in the weight room, and to be able to attack on that side. But as far as the pitching goes, adding those pitches, we've got early work. Guys get there. Our practice is at 2:00. They get there at 1:00. They can get dry work in. We're there as coaches. They can talk to us as coaches if they want some extra work. The biggest thing we tell guys is, we can work with you a certain amount of time, but it's going to be the time that you spend on your own that helps you develop and move on to that next level. Because, the reality is there's a lot of guys trying to take that spot at the next level, not just you. And so what you do on your own and how you want to work on that side is big. The other piece is the weight room. The weight room can be very big, especially guys that end up at a junior college. Guys nowadays have a lot more information than, I wasn't too long ago, but a lot more information than I had. And so how are they using that, getting in the weight room, pushing guys, making sure that they're getting in there and working out, just teaching them what it's like to be a college baseball player. I think that's helped in our development. And then our facilities are top notch. We talk about routine a lot. These guys have a turf infield to work. Our guys personally, they have a turf infield to work out on. We've got 2 machines in our indoor hitting cage. They can go in there and hit. Our weightlifting, our weight room is right next to our baseball field. So the routine that these guys can get into is huge for the development of our guys and just the focus of our guys too. And so they're able to kind of do that, help them, develop physically, mentally, in the classroom if need be, and then moving on to that next level.
It's awesome. I think it's interesting. You touch on the junior college side. There's not as many, limitations or rules that you have to necessarily follow or guideline. I know there is, but as far as the hours per week, I think a lot of times those junior college players that move on and have success at that next level is they learn to put the work in. As at the Division I side, you're so limited on hours per week, whether it be the weight room based, on field, instructional stuff, that I think those junior college players, if they truly learn how to put in that work, when they get put in that Division I environment, a lot of them thrive, which is pretty cool to see. And I think we talked on about it with another guest was, how Northwest players kind of have a chip on their shoulder a little bit. And, we're used to kind of grinding inside or being in the cold, whether it be wet or snow, and kind of putting some work in. So when you get those, bigger and better facilities, different climates, a lot of times I think Northwest players kind of thrive in that environment, which is kind of cool to see. And like I was saying, I guess junior college side of learning to put in the work is an important piece. And obviously the weight room is a whole nother factor, but pretty important as well.
Yeah.
Sorry,
DJ, and what you mentioned earlier about the teams we've had in the past, the championship type caliber teams. I've had to pull those guys out of the weight room. It's insane how much work those guys have put in. And I think by having a quality weight room, that it's right on campus, they're able to do that. But it's just pulling those guys off the turf. I mean, we got a long season, and some of these freshmen are pretty gung ho right away, which is what you want. You'd rather pull back than have to motivate and push so much. But I've had to pull those guys sometimes, be like, hey, we need to make it through May. You're in the weight room all the time, which is great. You're getting stronger, but and don't get me wrong, we do a lot in there, but I'd rather pull back, than have to push so much. And I think the biggest thing on those teams was that right there.
Yeah, and I'd say you probably can figure out a lot of that through the recruiting process too. I mean, as far as how motivated and how working are they. It's good. If you could, we'll kind of wrap up the teams a little bit here. If you want to throw in, if there's one thing, and I kind of know probably what you're going to say, if there's one thing that an incoming freshman could be ready for to contribute right away, and what would that be? I mean, that could be a lot of different things. Obviously, the academics, number one, have to be in order for that to even be a possibility. But as far as, is it the weight room? Is it the speed? Is it the coachability? Kind of what is one key tip you can kind of throw out to anybody that's listening here that wants to be ready for their freshman season of college?
Yeah, I think the coachability thing, like you touched on, is huge, because you want guys to come in. Obviously, they've been coached a lot of different ways, but we're trying to take 35 guys and trying to play the LC way. So it's being open-minded, coachability, open-minded, and then bringing the energy. I mean, to be honest, you can. I did the same thing when I was 16, 17, 18 and knew that college baseball was a route I could play and compete at. I thought I had a good feel of what college baseball was about and what it is, until you're put in that environment, and you're going to have your limits tested a lot. But keep an open mind with it. I mean, we work extremely hard, but the coachability piece, there's so many different coaches now, because there's coaches on Twitter, there's your personal coach, there's coaches you've had in the past, and that's all great. You can learn a lot from those guys. But also just buying into the program and earning those stripes too. Coming in right away and thinking you're great and the best player is good. I want you to have that confidence. But the next step is going to improving it and earning those stripes at that program. And also with us is a junior college, we are a stepping stone to something that is classified as better, let's say, whether it's Division I baseball, Division II, or pro ball. But being in the moment when you're there, I want guys to care about Lower Columbia baseball. I want these guys to move on and have the opportunities that I went through as well. But you got to be able to not worry so much about trying to get to that Division I level, but let's work our tail off, learn the process at Lower Columbia College, and enjoy this and go win championships. And that stuff can happen for you too. So I think those are the biggest pieces.
Interesting. That's awesome points. That kind of leads us, I guess, right into kind of the culture base. I think winning championships is, it's a signal of good culture. I think there's probably a lot more that go into it than just winning a championship. So let's maybe avoid the championship stuff a little bit. But
Yeah.
if you want to talk about your team cultures, and clearly you've built some strong relationships with your staff, but also with your players, current and former. If you want to touch a little bit about how important those relationships and connections are with the culture, and then maybe talk a little bit about how you're kind of going about that. And this would probably really benefit any coaches that are listening. But if you want to kind of, and I don't think I said that yet today, but there is a kind of a wide range of viewers, ages, and coaches involved in this call. So kind of touch on all those areas of kind of how you built these relationships, have this culture in place, been able to maintain this culture over for the last however many years it's been now.
Yeah. First of all, me personally, it's learning from coaches in the past, how they've kind of developed it, and also, adapting and learning. The player is different. They are brought up differently in the game, and so there's things we have to adapt as far as creating that culture. But and I've touched on it a little bit already. But the main thing is we want to develop relationships first in the recruiting process. We want to communicate with guys, and we want them to know the reality of LCC baseball. We want them to understand exactly what we're about. We don't want to hide anything. We want to be almost brutally honest with a lot of what we do, so that we can weed out guys that might not choose that path they want to go. And so we can be kind of selective there. And then when they get on campus, they know exactly what we're about. Now, there's going to be some things I got to learn and process and understand, but we want them to know a lot about what we do. And then once we get on campus and create this culture, it's kind of understanding each guy individually, and that's tough. We're a 2-year institution, and so you got to become a leader almost right away. I mean, our sophomores need to lead our freshmen. They've been through it before. And so trying to instill those leadership qualities in those guys early, so that program can keep going and guys know what they're about. We also want to test them. We want to test them physically. We want guys to pull for each other and see who's going to find another gear. Who's going to have to take a little longer time to learn how to find that gear, but also is that guy next to you going to be able to work his tail off for you? We want guys to get in the mindset that every single day they have to turn in their resume. It's not, hey, it's my job now, so I can kind of coast. They get in that. We got to create a competitive environment. I think each coach, that whether they're listening or just starting a program or been a part of a program that's been pretty successful, they want to have a lot of competition in there. I think that breeds good leadership qualities. I think it makes your team better, and that competition piece, we want to compete every single day in what we do, and I think it makes your college process a little more enjoyable, but it creates a competitive culture that you want within your team. I think some of those things are pretty important there.
Yeah, I think you hit that on the head. As far as I think back to my time at Lower Columbia. Obviously, I was there for 2 years. There's one moment that I'll never forget, and it was actually our team meeting my freshman year, up in the second deck of the library where Coach Smith loved to meet with everybody, kind of above his office, and exactly where I'm talking about. Anyway, we went around the room, and there's sophomores all introduced themselves, freshmen all introduced themselves. Some same thing you probably went through a couple years after me. And just the sophomores that stood up, and I'm a pitcher. The freshmen, I'm a pitcher. And then you start running the numbers. You're like, wow, there's 4 returners. There's these 6 freshmen. 3 of them were drafted out of high school. Yep. I think the first thing that I learned was to compete. And I think I learned that literally through that conversation. I would say that I was probably a competitor before that, but I don't think I had maybe that competitive drive, that's something I think is from Coach Smith and Lower Columbia. I really believe that is when I felt my trigger switched, and I kind of switched bolts. And I like you, I came from a small 1A school. I was a private school, but similar story about getting an opportunity to step into an outstanding program, learning things right away and trying to figure it out as you go, but really just committing to the process, putting in the work, and learning to compete was one of the biggest things that I felt like that first week for me of college was by far the biggest thing I took out of that. You've touched a little bit as far as the communication with the recruits and constant communication. Is there anything in particular you do? Is it just, is it face-to-face in the moment? Is it, methodical? Is it, is it text? Is it 24 hours after a game? How do you keep such good constant communication with your players?
Yeah, I think it's more quality over quantity in a lot of ways. I like to reach out to our guys, but the reality is there's a lot of them, and so I think when you get the time communicating with guys, there needs to be a lot of good topics and be able to communicate with guys on that side. But sometimes it can be through email first, then it's a exchange of numbers and text here, maybe a call every once in a while. But just trying to maintain a good relationship on that side, and then just kind of, testing them what they're like, what their communication level is about. And, you can kind of sense when you're just talking to someone, just the kind of quality of person they are. It's tough in our business because you're trying to make some quick decisions sometimes, but you think you can do a really good job of bringing guys in and making sure that communication piece also continues, once they're here.
Yeah.
I'm a little old school, and so a lot of my communication is just through email. I know there's a lot of apps out there that are probably a lot easier, and I know the assistant coaches here are pulling for that change, and maybe that's something we do. Maybe that's the re-energizing piece, this spring. But making sure guys know it. The last thing you want is guys not knowing, and I know it's me saying that now, and we're in a time where it's like we just don't know. I don't have a ton of information for the guys at this point. But once we get on campus, get going again, it's making sure guys know where they need to be. Our weekly plan is emailed out on Sunday. Our practice plan is posted. We give them monthly calendars, and so that communication is important here. And it starts, like I said, with that recruiting process.
Yeah, it's awesome. Let's kind of jump into kind of the offensive side of things. Very open-ended topic. Obviously, we could go on for hours with this topic as well. I guess before we go any further, anybody listening, there's that chat feature in there. If you have any questions on anything on or off topic, definitely jot those down in there. We'll get those answered for you. But as far as kind of transitioning into the offensive side of things, obviously with this success, I'm sure you have some sort of, obviously your offensive philosophy, which we don't necessarily need to get into details of that. But kind of how are you approaching, obviously, once again, it's going to start in the recruiting process, finding the players you like, and penciling them into positions and lineups and kind of futurizing your team that you bring in. But next level of that is how are you kind of, how are you talking? What are lingos you're using? What kind of drills? What are you working on as far as these hitters? And I know hitters are very different as far as the styles, producer, run scorer, whatever it may be. Kind of jump into kind of your offensive approach and your strategy of kind of how you handle your guys and your lineup.
Yeah, no, for sure. That's a huge topic now, and there's a lot of ways you can go about it. And sometimes you're walking on eggshells. The biggest thing is, the harder you hit the ball, the better chance you have to get on base for us to score a lot of runs. We want to develop guys, and each guy's a little bit different. We've got a lot of different guys coming in that have a different type of offensive approach. What we want to do is hit the ball really hard. And as far as, how we do that in development, there's a lot of different ways. One is we just want to hit a ton. I mean, I went to, Gonzaga where, Coach Mactoff wanted to hit all the time. It was the biggest thing. And so we want guys to be able to come out there and get a lot of hacks. We use the machine a lot. We've got 2 machines. We'll put that on the field, and that's the biggest teacher of staying short to a baseball that you can have. I can throw overhand all day to these guys, and that's great. And there's a time for that. But if we can get on a machine, mix in a slider, go fastball, amp up that velo a little bit, it allows us and some guys it's our hitting mat gets a little wet because there's so many tears hitting it when we first start that machine. But it's amazing to watch guys develop their swing just without us even really saying anything sometimes. It's just, hey, we're going to keep hitting off this, and that's going to show you that short stroke.
Start to figure it out.
Exactly. And then also, but we do a lot of stuff too. We're not too gimmicky. We like a few things that we think will help guys, but each guy's a little bit different. Coach Lipinski and myself and Coach Forgione, we kind of work together in the offense. We're on the same page, but we work together, whether it's, hey, Coach Lipinski's there a little bit early from 1 to 2, and he's working with guys in the cages before and during practice. But, we don't really talk about launch angle. Obviously, I want guys to have a great launch angle to hit doubles and home runs. But the first part is for us is to is to hit the ball hard. If it happens to be on the ground, it happens to be on the ground for that at bat. Sometimes that happens. You get us a little bit over it, but we want to hit line drives where we backspin off the fence. I think Chipper Jones said it best. He likes to hit backspin line drives off the opposite field foul pole, and obviously he can do that right and left-handed. But I think there's some good approach on that side of it. But yeah, and then when we've got a whole fall, our guys have about 120 at bats before we even get to the season. I think it's crazy when guys come in. As much as I know them in the recruiting process, I think it's crazy to come in and just fill their minds up with everything the first 2 weeks. I mean, they're trying to grasp college baseball. They're trying to learn how to compete. And so we don't say a lot when they first come in. It's, hey, we're going to watch you guys for a couple weeks here, maybe a month. And then we've got a ton of time in, October, November, December, January, inside when it gets snowy or rainy, where we can work on some things on that side. But ultimately we want to be relax in the box, all that stuff that you hear. We don't want a ton of movement. Some guys have more than others. I get that, and they have different rhythm. But we want guys to be able to attack the baseball in a lot of balance, and sometimes that's a little bit less movement for some guys at some point. So.
Totally. I think you said that great. I didn't want to get into the exit velo or the launch angle. I completely agree with your exit velocity. Yeah. That's, obviously the facility here, 20 batting cages, 5 of our machines. So that, we see a lot of kids coming in. I don't want to say a critique, but I watch a lot of routines. I watch a lot of kids come in and maybe don't go on the machines or vice versa. Just the value of the machine reps. And like you were saying, it makes you kind of figure out and learn how to get a little bit shorter, how to get on time, and how to barrel a ball up. So I thought that was interesting that you said that. As far as the exit velo, I mean, for me, that's probably our by far number one thing that we tell people to watch. We have the hit track set up in here, and judge yourself on how hard you can hit it. You're in a cage anyways. You're not really going to see much. So really challenging yourself to try to track that exit velocity, I think, is huge. And I also think to kind of finish off with that kind of talk is, I think it also depends on where every hitter's at kind of in their own process. If you're talking about an 8-year-old kid, should we talk about launch angle? Absolutely not. If we're talking about a 16 to 18-year-old kid who's got a chance and he's starting to, put it all together, that transition to talk probably changes a little bit. So having context of knowing who the hitter is, I think, is huge when we get into kind of that style of talking. So kind of, I guess, for the viewers and listeners out there is, if you want to jump into that game, that's great. But I would say challenge yourself to figure out, who you are as a hitter. I think it was Coach Fergus on the first call 4 weeks ago was talking about run producers, run creators, hybrid style hitters. Figure out who you are. And if you don't know, I mean, there's plenty of ways to find that out as far as the research side, or our messaging or emails are definitely open if you have questions on that side.
And sorry, DJ, the other big thing is just kind of knowing who you are, and try not to be someone else. I would have loved him in Aaron Judge. I would have loved that. It would have been great. I wouldn't have run the bases as much, hit the ball over the fence. And that's great. Some guys are a little more on that side, but if I would have tried doing that, Mike, I don't know what would have happened. So it's kind of knowing who you are. And it's like, listen, if you can hit 330 and you might not have as many home runs, but you got a few doubles scattered in there, you get on base a lot, you run the bases, that might be the type of player you are. And sometimes I feel like we see the home run so much on Twitter and ESPN that I love swinging hard, and I love hitting the ball hard, and I love hitting home runs, and it will come for a lot of guys. But at the same time, if you're trying to be someone that you're not, you could go backwards in some ways. But that's individually sometimes with certain guys.
Totally. If you want to maybe add in on that, I'm sure you've had a player, hopefully not, but a player kind of battle the style of player they are, hitting too many fly balls or the guy that shouldn't, or vice versa. How have you been able to maybe connect with those players and kind of get them to maybe, grasp and understand what you're looking for? I'm not asking to hit fly balls, and I'm not asking to hit ground balls either. So how have you kind of transitioned for some of those guys that have, maybe not really seen the connect there? How have you kind of helped gather that and bring that together?
Yeah, sometimes it can be visual and video. We don't do a ton of video. We do some. I mean, it's part of the game and showing that piece. But it's also, keeping stats through the fall. And hey, like, listen, we give you your time to do it your way for a lot of the time, 2 weeks to a month. We give you a lot of time to do that. Maybe here's a few adjustments we can go for. And we've got a lot of time together. In high school, you don't get as much time. We get a lot. So you can experiment in ways to help these guys figure out maybe what's the best way that I can be the most effective for the team. And you got a lot of time in the cages, but the biggest thing is if a guy's trying to do too much and trying to hit, and he's just popping out, not even to the warning track and just hitting too many fly balls, it's like, hey, well, let's come work early. We can. You have the cages to go work, but you got to be able to put work in. If you're in the cages, and we can work with you and make some adjustments. And sometimes it's visual with things, and sometimes guys, they just don't know. You get a lot of different guys that come into a junior college program. Some guys, they come from like 1A or 2A high schools. Not saying the coaching's bad at all. It's just, they haven't been able to have as much coaching, and they just don't know. And so it's just explaining it a little bit to them and trying to instill that in them as we go. And sometimes there's battles. Sometimes we butt heads a little bit. It is what it is, but we have the same goal in mind to get you better, and it's a win for the team. And so bringing perspective on that side can help a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that kind of jumped into our next question too. Is how are you, giving these players a better understanding of who they are, what their identity is. I'm sure, you probably have conversations, whether it be during the game, after the game, before the game, practice mode, as far as, hey, you're in this positional lineup because of this reason, and you need to be good at this. I mean, how do you help those guys really buy into kind of their role within that lineup and kind of that offensive strategy?
Yeah, a lot of it, I think. These guys are smart. They really are. I think sometimes they get a bad rap, this generation, or even my generation. I'm not that much older than them, but they are smart and they figure it out. And I think a lot of the times it can be on their own. They realize once they come from high school where they might have been the best player on the team. They get here, and we get a lot of inter squads, and they're going to see a lot of failure early. They just are. I mean, I did a lot of guys that I've seen that have had a bad fall. I mean, Justin Jacobs, he had hit like 198 that fall and hit 400 for us during the season. And so guys that can stick with it, that are coachable and get a lot of repetition. They're going to have more repetition than they've ever had. And they're going to come in and be able to realize, okay, maybe I'm not that same guy I was in high school where I could get away with some things. I have to be a little more, just a little more aggressive or a little less aggressive. I got to be able to learn from the game and adjust in certain ways. They see so many at bats, so you can just watch guys. But some guys, they might back away a little bit. They get a little too afraid. They're like, oh, okay, maybe I'm not as good, and they kind of lose some confidence. And it's just bringing perspective to them. It's giving them, hey, listen, I knew a guy one time. This is what he did, and just working through my history in baseball or maybe some of the knowledge that I have throughout the years when I played, and trying to bring something back from the past, and maybe that can help this kid. I've gone through this. A lot of guys have gone through this, and trying to instill more of a confidence and maybe more of a work ethic sometimes in guys to go out there and keep pushing through it.
Yeah, that's awesome. We got a couple questions in on the chat here, so if anybody else has more, definitely throw those in there. Travis, we touched on this briefly at the beginning, as far as the important things you're looking for and kind of the recruits you're bringing in. I think we kind of touched on the communication aspect being important. I'm assuming that means answering the call when the coach gives you a call, returning that voicemail if you don't answer it. Besides kind of the obvious communication factor of that, what other kind of key factors are you looking for? And I'd add on to that is there one kind of attribute you love, whether it be the speed or the arm strength or the strength of a kid? Is there something that really kind of drives Coach Lane to kind of really fire up a recruit?
Yeah. I like watching guys play, and more than just their at bats, but how they interact with their teammates between, the physical side. I obviously want the guy to be a very solid athlete, be able to move, have an awareness of the strike zone. If you're looking at hitters, how guys handle the failure and adversity. I mean, I've been to a lot of games, watched a lot of pitchers where maybe they know I'm there, maybe they don't, but they just don't handle, the double in the gap or a walk. And you can just read body language. You can just see them shut down. I want to see guys be able to handle that adversity. I can go to a game and I want to watch at bats, obviously, how they can hit, but be able to just watch how they interact with teammates. Are they picking them up? A guy lays down a bunt or a guy hits a double, it's a big double. Is he fired up for his teammate, or is he worried about maybe the strikeout he had his last at bat? And a lot of these sound like a cliche, but it's real life, and it's huge. When they get here, we can't worry about their body language. We don't want to worry about that. Actually, our inter squads, it doesn't go off really the scoreboard and who scores more runs. It's by the little details, and it's picking up, and it's the energy piece, and it's laying down a bunt. It's stuff that you don't necessarily want to do, but you're executing. We do a point system. If you body wah, if you're negative body language, you don't pick up a teammate, then you get minus points. And that holds a little accountability, because the guy at the end of the dugout who's doing it and you're not doing it, he's mad because all of a sudden you're losing points because he's sulking, and it's just real life stuff on that side. But kind of a long answer there, but that's kind of the big things we're looking for.
No, I think you hit it right on the head. I mean, obviously, I think that needs to be said with the recruiting piece is typically you're recruiting a kid you're interested in. So that piece is already kind of behind you. You already know you're intrigued by something this kid's doing on and probably off the field for that matter. But yeah, one thing, I think it was Coach Dangler, Dave Dangler. I think I want to say the Marlins scout up here now. I'm not sure who he's with, but a local Northwest scout up here once told me years ago when I was coaching at Tacoma, is he loved, and he always tell me, is you want to see the recruit you're going to watch fail. And for that reason alone is, how's he handling it? You liked him for a reason. Let's go see what his stuff looks like, but also let's test his makeup right away. Let's see how he handles getting shelled if he's on the mound, or, a 1-for-4 day with 3 punch outs, whatever the case may be. There's something to be said about how a kid handles getting punched in the face, because I think we all know that college season, that pro season, even that high school season for that matter, that the long summer season, you're going to get punched in the face more often than not in this game, no matter what position you're playing. So I think it's important to kind of understand how people, wear that and how they recover from it, whether it be 5 minutes later or the next day. There needs to be some sort of response from that. And I think it's important to kind of see that. And it's cool that you kind of brought that up.
Yeah, for sure.
Couple other questions here. How do you tell your positions, or just one sec. How do you tell that your position players are going to the positions and kind of they're in the right position? And I'm going to kind of start this off for you. Obviously, during the recruiting process, you're targeting the players you want based on positions, based on roster needs, or what you foresee maybe happening with draft or Division I signees or whatever else happens. The baseball college roster is very tough to kind of manipulate as it is. I guess, how do you bring in those certain kids and kind of handle getting them into the right positions? I do know that, every kid gets, put into different positions at some point through their college career, usually, whether it be good or bad. I think that's different for every kid. But how do you kind of go through that process? I would imagine a lot of that's done through the fall, kind of like you mentioned, but is there anything other than what you haven't said that as far as goes into that?
Yeah. Every team we've had is a little bit different. We've had some guys that come in the infield and, they're solid defensively in the infield, but they can really swing it. And sometimes we can find them an outfield spot on that side. And it's not a negative thing. It's just something where you on your high school team, whether it's a really good team or not so good, you're put in that position because you're the best player for that position. And usually it's that shortstop or catcher or center field, wherever it is. That's how you're helping that particular team, win games, and that's put you in a good position. Well, when you get to, the college level, there's a lot of guys that are equivalent talent or might be more talented than you are. And for that specific team, you're helping with the bat. So we want to find you a spot. And sometimes we have a need somewhere else. Well, hey, make the adjustment first. This year we had a kid that was a third baseman from Vancouver that we moved, our third baseman that we moved over to the first base because we had 2 guys that were really quality third basemen and we wanted them both in the lineup. And so we hey, you're going to fit more as a first baseman anyway at the next level when you move on. Let's try that spot. We've had guys that our catchers, a lot of our catchers have a secondary position, just in case that catching position doesn't work out, whether it's outfield or first base or what have you. I've seen a lot of guys, Chase Matheny, I am bringing up his name. One of my favorite guys, he came in as an infielder and, he kind of realized on his own that it maybe not the best position for me. We put him in right field and he might've been one of the best outfielders we had in the years I've been here. Just quality of reads and everything. And it's a position that he should have been in. And at the next level, I think he'll strive there. So sometimes it changes. It depends on the team and how they fit in.
Totally. And I think that's part of the development path too of, you know, a freshman versus a sophomore, or at the 4-year
Yeah.
level, you know, that freshman bat that should maybe be a catcher is now in left field or DHing
Yeah.
for a year before he transitions back to that primary position. Or like you said, Matheny getting thrown out to right field, and it sounds like he may not leave that position now. So there's, you know, some blessings in disguises on that piece of things.
And I went
That kind of leads.
I went through it too. I went from second base to third base. I mean, I know it's the infield position. You're not changing drastically, but there's a lot of different things you have to handle over there. And so, yeah, I went over there and it was great. You know, I just sometimes it's different at every team you're on.
Yeah. That kind of leads into Noah's question. What kind of value do you place on a utility player? I would say, you know, baseball is probably a great game to have the utility position. Obviously, with so many different positions, you know, and obviously the injury piece, and you never really know. But kind of touch on maybe your thoughts on recruiting a utility guy and kind of how they bring value to a team.
Oh yeah, for sure. No, utility. We've had plenty of those guys. Whether it's a two-way pitcher and hitter, whether it's an outfielder, catcher, or we've had a lot of those different guys, and it allows you as a manager, if you're managing a game, to have a lot more options. You know, if there's an injury, you have to plug someone in. If you can play multiple positions and you can do it at a high level, that is huge. And a lot of guys have made their careers in the bigs. The first one comes to my mind is Willie Bloomquist. We watched him play for the Mariners, and it adds Ryan Friel. It adds just, you can name a lot of guys in the utility position. It adds a ton of value. Now, you know, maybe you end up being a utility guy when you get to college. Maybe I'm a shortstop all the time because usually it's the best athlete and they play center field, or, you know, they can play left field or first base where they end up. Utilities is a big piece. It allows you a lot of flexibility.
Yeah, I think Alex Berger, I think it was 2 weeks ago now, he brought up, he said he was, you know, a longtime journeyman as far as, I think he said, a 10-year minor league career. He was labeled as a utility guy. For him, he said it was, hey, I was a guy that could hit and I could play multiple positions. So, I mean, I think there's definitely, you said there's value there. I would definitely say you're 100% correct on that. And without a doubt, especially in the college game, as well as kind of the issues and deals that we kind of all battle with. Looks like we got a little question. Who's your favorite baseball player? Let's say current or former Major League Baseball player.
Yeah, Chipper Jones. I mentioned him already. I just, you know, obviously we grew up when the Atlanta Braves had that TBS contract, and so they were on TBS quite a bit, and I loved watching him play. I love that he's a switch hitter. I never really tried, but I was a big Chipper Jones fan. I got his autograph. Well, my mom got an autograph for me. Yeah, he was at the hotel.
That counts.
So, yeah.
That counts.
Yeah.
All right, well, we got on Facebook, we're live right now as well. So we got a question coming through Facebook from Chris Smith, who I'm sure you know his son well.
Yeah.
Asking about the importance of Forgione. I'm sure he has maybe details or something to go with that. But if you want to talk maybe about the importance of a first base coach.
Yeah, Chris, great question. It's not to forget about Forge. I mean, first of all, Forgione adds a lot because he's a security guard on campus. He is a referee. He does lessons. So he's doing a lot. You know, I've been in his position before, like a lot of us have, and it can be tough, but he comes in, he does the infielders. You know, I give him free reign on that, and our base running too. And base running gets overlooked, and what he has been able to do on the base paths with this information to the guys and the focus on the base paths has been huge. He's a former Red Devil himself. He's been through it. I was a former Red Devil and been through it, and so he adds a different element that some guys can't. I've been there, and so I have a lot of good things to say about him. He's just been huge for our program and what we've done, and he grinds it out and has been just loyal and awesome with everything.
Yeah, he's a first-class dude, and I got to know his older brother as well. I mean, that's a great family for sure. Last part of Chris's question is he kind of wanted to get your thoughts, and he also wanted to tell you your NWAC call last year, the suicide squeeze. If you want to maybe talk to us about how you were able to put that call on and make that happen.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. Gosh, it's he said last year, right?
Yeah. Let's see. Last year, the NWAC suicide squeeze.
Yep. And so we got a lot of safeties. We safety squeeze quite a bit. You know, sometimes it depends on the hitter if you trust, and I really like doing it because we work on it, and I think our guys are very solid at it, and it takes the base runner to be able to do it too. And I think when I look at it, I saw that we had a guy that could run a little bit, and a guy that could execute. And sometimes people told me, why are you doing that when you're up, 4 or 5 runs in the 7th? I just tell them I like to be up 6. It's just, if you're able to add a run, and maybe the guy's struggling at the dish, maybe you need something to help that guy move forward. I can't remember specifically who it was, to be honest. I'm sorry, Chris. I know you do, but sometimes that's kind of my thought process is, even if we're up 4 or 5, I like to be up 6, and let's get that run in, and it worked out perfectly. And sometimes it doesn't. I think 2 NWACs ago, I called it, and we bunted through it and got thrown out at third base. So you win some and you lose some. But
totally, that's part of being a skipper now, right?
Yeah.
I guess part of that being, as far as the suicide squeeze, I think that also plays into the style of Northwest junior college baseball with the wood bat and obviously the weather and like you hit it on the head. I think some players, they need to do something different. They need to not swing. They need to track the ball to the bat. They need to change something up to get out of that rhythm or that funk that they're in. So
sure.
There's a lot of different reasons why you may or may not bunt, but I remember something along those lines, you doing something a little risky during the tournament, but I couldn't remember myself what moment that was either.
No, I know exactly what it is. It was not the greatest idea. I thought it was more aggressive than anything, but I feel like we go with our gut a lot, and sometimes hopefully it works out more often than not.
Awesome. Well, I have one more question for you on my end. It looks like we've answered all the ones in the chat. So if anybody has anything left, definitely throw those in there. But we've kind of wrapped up each call with any sort of curriculum or podcast or books that maybe you're reading or read or highly encourage that we jump into. Obviously, we have a lot of free time at our hands in some shape or form, and continue to grow in the game, or maybe it's the mental side. What do you kind of recommend jumping into, if not maybe already?
Yeah, you know what, to be honest with you, I don't think I've ever listened to a podcast. I know that's crazy, but I've read a few books. I don't read a lot on the baseball side. I know that sounds nuts, but I've read some Malcolm Gladwell books that kind of eye-opening on a lot of things, Outliers and David and Goliath. I know those don't really necessarily always pertain to baseball, but in a lot of ways they can if you're kind of reading through that scope. And so those are 2 quality books that I've read. The Energy Bus, and we've all heard of it. It's a really solid one because we pride ourselves in energy here. So if I have to, plug the books, that would be what it is. Podcasts, I'm sure there's a bunch out there, and I would love to hear from other people and some good ones to listen to.
Well, I'm compiling a list of kind of everybody, so I'll definitely get you CC'd in that email when we wrap up these calls, and have a big list of books and podcasts for you.
Yep, that'd be awesome.
Other than that, Coach, I want to appreciate you and say thank you for jumping in on this call tonight. I'm sure your wife's ready for you to get off the computer, so I appreciate jumping in and being open with us and kind of running through the ins and outs of Lower Columbia and kind of how it's morphed into what it is today. I think it's pretty cool to see the success they're continuing to have. As far as that, I don't have much else here. We do have a donation set up for Coaches vs. COVID for anybody that's interested and that's been jumping in on some calls, and $1, $5, whatever you feel like comfortable for yourself. Definitely jump into that. Appreciate any sort of donations from anybody on that aspect. Jumping in on the big piece with Tanner Swanson and the rest of the crew, trying to fundraise for a good cause here. So other than that, we got a couple of good calls left this week. We have Daniel Laurie tomorrow on the softball side of things, and then on Thursday we have Jeff Calhoun, the head coach from Biola, another Northwest guy. So we're excited to kind of jump into the college coaches this week. We haven't really done that the last 4 weeks, so a couple new topics coming this week. So we're excited. Definitely pass the word. Let people know it's completely free. Just register, get that link emailed to you, and you'll be ready to go. So other than that, thanks, Coach Lane. We're excited to get hopefully baseball back on the field hopefully soon, and I'll always be rooting for the Red Devils. So
yeah, appreciate it, DJ, for having us on, and thank you so much. This is awesome.
Awesome. Well, have a great night. Good night, everybody.
Take care, guys.